Kia ora koutou. Thank you for joining us for our 3 p.m. update today on Friday the 3rd of February. 1 week on now from the flood that struck us in Auckland, causing a range of devastating effects. This afternoon's briefing I'm joined by Nick Vigar. So Nick is Auckland Council's Head of Planning for Healthy Waters, and he's going to give us just an overview of some of the work that the Healthy Waters team is doing in response to the flood, and then we'll break at the end of this briefing and there'll be a more detailed separate stand-up that Nick and his team are going to take you through. We also have back again this afternoon Stacey Vanderputten, who is Auckland Transport's Executive General Manager for Safety. So again, just recapping some of our general messages as we move into the long weekend. Make sure you stay informed and keep updated on the weather forecast at metservice.com/warnings. Please avoid unnecessary travel, particularly if the weather is not looking that great out there, and check road conditions if you do have to head out. I'm sure Stacey will cover this off, but we still have a number of roads throughout the region that have partial or full closures in place. Floods and flash floods can happen quickly. We've seen this in real time. Please act immediately if you see any rising water, and don't wait for official warnings to head to higher ground. Our aem.org.nz website has all of the information and updates that we are sharing with you, so that's a really good place to go to for a sort of a one-stop shop of information. And of course, always, if there is any kind of immediate risk to people throughout the next couple of days or any time, then please call 111 immediately. I'm going to start this briefing by just covering off the extension of the local state of emergency declaration. So Mayor Wayne Brown has today extended the local state of emergency for the Auckland region for a further 7 days. That's a standard period of time for these declarations, but it is possible to terminate those early if it's no longer needed. The extension is necessary because Auckland remains in the response phase of this event, with new damage and risks to the public still continuing to be discovered and reported, meaning access to emergency powers is still required. This significant event continues to require a degree of coordination for that response alongside a range of partner agencies, given the scale and the widespread nature of the emergency. Right, I'm now going to just move now to introducing again Nick. So Nick Vigar is Auckland Council's Head of Planning for Healthy Waters, and he's going to give us an overview of just a quick update of our stormwater networks and what's happening in that space. And as I said, there'll be a more detailed stand-up with Nick and some of his colleagues after this briefing has ended.
Thank you, Rachel. Kia ora koutou. So Rachel mentioned that I was going to talk about the Healthy Waters response, but what I'd like to talk about is not so much the short-term response that we've been involved with, still involved with, but have been involved with for the last few days. What I want to talk about is more the long-term response. And so as people start to recover from this event, what we're noticing is a lot of requests to understand why people have flooded. For many people, they've flooded for the first time. And so what I'll endeavour to give today is a sort of the key points around the event we just had, to try and give a level of understanding to people about why they flooded as badly as they did. And in doing that, what I'm going to try and do is paint a realistic picture of what can and what can't be done for those people to help them remove themselves from risk, or to lower their risk when the next event of this size comes through. And the main thing I'll concentrate, or one of the key points I'll concentrate, is the importance of something we call overland flow paths in our network. Thank you, Rachel.
And for an update on the transport network, I've got Auckland Transport's Executive General Manager of Safety, Stacey Vanderputten, and Stacey's going to talk to how things are going on the road.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. I mean, obviously our key message is still to make sure that everybody checks our website for the latest travel information at at.govt.nz. There's a banner up the top that takes people automatically to all the updated information as it changes. So as of today, we have 29 road closures, and that's due across the region due to slips and other roading issues. We have reopened more than 60 roads since Friday. We have approximately 500 maintenance staff across our network every day, and we have more available that are on standby. We have 47 flood damaged vehicles have been towed so far today, with 569 currently pending. That makes a total of 1,867 vehicles having been towed to date. So in terms of those key impacted roads across the region, currently in the North Shore we have Beach Road and Glenvar Road. They're both closed in both ways, both directions. Within the central region we had Beechcroft Avenue, we have Tamaki Drive, we have Shore Road in Remuera, Rossmaid Terrace, and they're all closed in both ways, and Napapi Road in Iraki is southbound lane is closed. So in the Rodney region we have Millflat Road. The Bailey Bridge installation continues with residents having access via the Riverhead Forest. Work continues in terms of the Millflat Road Bailey's Bridge installation, which is scheduled to be fully open on Wednesday. Kaipara Hills Road and Ahurua Road in Puhoi are closed both ways. In the south we have Awhitu Road, south of Kemp Road, closed in both ways. We have Momokai Hill Road, Otau Mountain Road and Sherwood Drive closed both ways. In the west we have Mountain Road in Henderson Valley is closed both ways, same with Wood Bay Road and Scenic Drive. In Aotea Great Barrier we have Cape Barrier Road and Shoal Bay Road, which are both closed in both ways. Our public transport network, the bus network is nearly back to capacity and with normal running schedules. There are 7 current detour routes in place, including the Tamaki link, which is currently with the Tamaki Road being closed. We encourage obviously everybody to make sure they use and plan their journey via AT Mobile and get the latest information, because with detours there are obviously some delays to travel journey times. Train services are running in certain parts of the network. Where they're not running, we do have bus replacements in play. Trains are running at a reduced timetable due to speed restrictions across the network. Ferries are back to their normal timetable today. That's with the exception of Gulf Harbour, which is currently operating a bus replacement. Our cycling network, so on the cycle network, it was assessed yesterday, and Grafton Gully and the Waikaraka Penrose cycle path are closed due to fallen trees and debris across the path. The other cycle paths we do encourage people to ride with caution, as there is obviously mud covering some of those tracks, so just be cautious. In terms of car parks are open across the city. However, the Civic car park level 2 and 3 are currently still closed. With the long weekend ahead, we please encourage people to take the time to plan your journey. We know over long weekends a lot of Aucklanders do like to leave the city, either north or south, with Coromandel obviously being a holiday spot too. So we do encourage people to make sure that they plan their journeys and understand across the region where you're travelling to take the extra time to understand what is open, what is closed, where there's diversions in place. As said, to keep up to date, make sure you go to at.gov.nz. The team will be updating that over the weekend as the situation changes and bringing you information as soon as we have it. Our message to all Aucklanders this weekend is please travel safe on our roads this long weekend. If you are travelling around, plan your journey and allow extra time. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacey. And just listening to that update and the number of roads that have been impacted, I'm going slightly off script here, so it will make it harder for my interpreter. But it did make me reflect that a number of those roads are access points to some of our large recreational areas, the Hanua and Waitakere ranges. So again, just planning ahead if you're looking to go and visit some of those outdoor areas in the region once that weather settles down a wee bit, but also thinking about that a number of our tracks and walkways will have had some impacts as well. So making sure that you're looking at our Auckland Council website for those pieces of necessary park information. So just moving on now to welfare, just an update around our welfare response. So our welfare and logistics teams are continuing to work as quickly as possible to conduct needs assessments and get displaced people into accommodation. Again, if you know of someone that needs help, or if you yourself need help, please reach out to us on 0800 22 2200. Information on what support is available to you can be found on the Auckland Emergency Management website, that's aem.org.nz, or you can alternatively come and speak to us at one of our Civil Defence centres or community support hubs. There are the 3 Civil Defence centres open at Ramwick Park, Albany and Henderson. Our Kelston Centre has now transitioned to the Bruce McLaren Community Centre at Hub West, 27 Corbin Avenue, Henderson. Our 5 community support hubs also remain open. These are Moana Nui a Kiwa, Pool and Leisure Centre at Mascot, Ave Mangere, Te Manawa at Westgate, the New Lynn Community Centre, Fickling Convention Centre, and the Birkenhead Leisure Centre. We're also aware there is a number of communities supporting each other with their own initiatives as well, so that is fantastic, and just want to acknowledge that effort. In terms of other forms of help, Auckland Council, there is now the Auckland Council Emergency Relief Fund. So Auckland Council has an emergency relief fund that supports people who are experiencing hardship due to the flooding and need urgent financial assistance. Applications to the Auckland Council Emergency Relief Fund can be made online on Auckland Council's website. And people can call us on 09 301 0101, so that's a different number from the 0800 support line. So again, for the Auckland Council Relief Fund, 09 301 0101, during our normal business hours for assistance to complete the application forms. There is also other assistance available from the Ministry of Social Development, who have civil defence payments that can also be accessed to those impacted by the flood. With respect to waste collection, we just want to thank the many Aucklanders who have already disposed of their flood-damaged household items over the past week. We've had approximately 1,500 customers bring flood-affected material through our transfer stations. And that equates to around 500 tonnes of waste disposed of. We also have 200 skip bins or thereabouts across the region being dropped off and picked up by 20 skip bin specific trucks. By getting rid of your waste as quickly as possible, you've really helped with the cleanup efforts, and it's really important that that is done, to remain, so that we can make sure that households' properties are safe and sanitary, particularly contents inside houses that may have been sodden with flood waters. We have had some reports of recovery of food and other items from curbside and also some of those skip bins, and just really want to remind people that that material is being discarded for a reason. It has come in contact with floodwater that could potentially be contaminated, so we really just discourage that is something to do. It could, those items could be both unsafe from a consumption perspective, but also damaged and not safe to use. So just really don't advise that people do that. I want to acknowledge the work of the waste collection teams, the New Zealand Defence Force, and also volunteer civil defence response teams and our own staff who have been working hard to support the removal of flood damaged items from residential homes. As we head into the long weekend and the weather starts to improve, no doubt more people will be working through flood damaged items in their homes. And we've talked about just taking those right steps to handle that material. So again, just a reminder, it could be contaminated, protective gear, washing hands after coming into contact. We know that many of you will be getting help from family and friends with this task if your house has been affected, but we're also aware that there are people out there in the community that might not have the same access to others to help them. So if you're in that situation, please reach out to us and we will get one of our response teams or work with our colleagues in the Defence Force or other community volunteers to connect you with the assistance you might need. So again, ringing 0800 22 2200 to get that support. And that brings our regular briefing to a close. And as I mentioned, Nick is going to be going into a separate briefing just to give you a more detailed overview of the future-looking state in terms of waste stormwater. We will be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock for our briefing, our regular stand-up briefing, but it will just be the one briefing tomorrow afternoon. So to that end, I'll bring this briefing to a close, and if anyone's got some questions for us, we're happy to take a couple of those.
Getting into the long weekends, obviously Aucklanders would usually want to get out and about. From your perspective, what are your main concerns looking ahead over the coming days?
Well, I think, there are a number of things people need to think about if they're heading out. So we've heard about the need to sort of plan your journey. There are a number of disruptions still to the roading network, including to places that people might usually like to visit. Probably one of the things that people also need to be aware of, and we've touched on this at previous briefings, is the fact that all of our urban beaches still have a black pin in terms of sort of the safe swim certification, so they're not safe to swim at the moment. And the remainder of our beaches have a red pin, which again is an advisory of not swimming. And it's likely that they will remain in place for some days yet, just due to the amount of water that has come in from catchments, but also other risks to public safety, like debris that has been sort of pushed out into some of those coastal environments. So that's really something to think about.
Is there a number on the total number of slips that have come down over the past week? I know we've got a number of roads closed, but do we have a number of slips themselves?
Look, we don't have a total number of slips because, of course, some of those slips will be quite visible, so in areas that are associated with the roading network and houses, but there is also a number of slips in sort of our backcountry parks as well. What we're doing is working hard to get a more comprehensive picture of the full extent of slips using a range of methods, including some additional photography, aerial photography, that we can do some particular sort of analysis of to get that full extent.
We heard it could be about 1,000. Do you think that could be accurate?
Gosh, I couldn't tell you the number. Like I said, I still feel that we don't have the full picture of the number of slips, and in fact we are still seeing some slip activity happening, even today. So that is one thing that we need to be careful of, is that there still will be potential for rain over the weekend. The ground is still particularly sodden. We are still seeing ground-based movement.
And so, as you mentioned, the Mayor was advised in extending the state of emergency. Was he also advised on saying that it was likely to end earlier than 7 days?
No, that's a standard. That is a standard framing, really, of that declaration extension. So they are extended for 7 days with the option of ending early. And I guess that's just that is how we frame them. Yep.
There are also a number of events that are still going on, and some that have been cancelled, like the Lantern Festival, obviously. Is there a set of guidelines as to what can go ahead and what can't, or why are some on and some cancelled?
Look, most of those decisions sit with the actual organiser of those events, and what they need to do is take into account the context of their specific event, where it was going to be held, how it was going to be accessed, and any other factors that might influence the successful running of their event. So, in terms of our guidance, or our role is not really to necessarily tell those organisers what to do, but to give them good information around how they base those decisions.
Can I ask about the process for people who have their homes have been red stickered? What do they do, and what does the future look like for them?
I have got Ian McCormick, who you've been speaking with in previous briefings, who's our General Manager, looking after the building assessment process, and he will be able to give you a much better answer than I probably can on that one.
Thank you. Good question. So the red placards obviously denote buildings that we've identified as having significant damage through our rapid assessment process. On those ones, we've prohibited access to those buildings. If someone wants to access the site, we'd like to give us a call on our 0800 number, and we will discuss, based on our knowledge of the sites and I guess what's being requested, what level of support we'll provide. So depending on whether the person's accessing the site with someone who's trained in entering sites like that, for example, an insurance assessor or an engineer, for example, then we'll probably say yes, carry on, that's good. In some other cases, we might, depending on the risks we've identified, actually go to site and accompany them on.
Do you have the latest numbers on how many reds?
Yes, I do. Our current number of reds is 232. And while I'm talking, I may as well cover yellows has gone up as well. That's 1,294. And whites, 2,127. So we've currently done over 4,000 building assessments to date.
So we've got it on the record. Can you tell us what you do if you've been red stickered, yellow stickered, or white stickered, and can you enter your home if you've been issued one of them?
Yeah, so the red one, give us a call on that 0800 number and we'll discuss. In terms of the yellows, depending on what the restrictions are on the usage of the building, which will be detailed on that placard, you can use the building within that range. So that's not a problem. You can bring your experts in. You can do what you need to do. What we do want you to do is have a conversation with us about what type of works you intend to do. We want to be as much support to you as possible. For example, if you, in some cases you might need a building consent for that work, we want to have that discussion and work out how can we make that work best for you. We also want to know that if it does require a building consent, we want you to tell us when you put that application in so we know, because we're going to be putting a fast track process and give priority to those consents. We'll have a team of people who will be doing those consents because we want to minimise the impact of this on people in that sort of situation.
Ian, are there buildings that you haven't reached yet?
Yes, there would be. Yeah. So we've pretty much covered the buildings that have been reported to us to date, and that we've seen in the catchment sites we've been through. But from time to time we are finding new areas where we haven't necessarily received any complaints. It hasn't been communicated to emergency services before, and in which case when we go into those areas we're actually looking at other buildings and we're identifying more from time to time. We expect to continue to be identifying buildings where we'll be performing rapid building assessments for probably at least the next 2 weeks, I would imagine.
Do you have this is a question you probably can answer, but do you have a rough idea as to how many buildings yet to be reached that need to be assessed?
Well, my original assessment on the impact assessments on Saturday was that it was around about 5,000 residential and commercial buildings affected based on the 40-odd catchment areas that we identified. We've identified probably another 2 or 3 over and above that, which are sort of areas of impact, which are in, if you like, a low-lying area. So I'm still thinking that that number is probably reasonably accurate. One of the things we are aware of is that in some cases people are not advising us that they've had flood damage to the home. They're getting on and repairing it. They've got the means to be able to do that, so we don't have visibility of those. I'd imagine in some cases people will be possibly coming to us at a later stage. Their insurers might be speaking to them and saying, hey, look, it would be a good idea if you get the council around to do an assessment as well, in which case we'll continue to get more of these rapid assessment requests coming through. One of the other things to mention, and we talked a little bit about it already about landslips, is that there's an awful lot of water in the soil. A lot of the soils we've got in Auckland are sedimentary rocks, interlaid, siltstone, mudstone, sandstone, and when they react with water, they can become, they can erode, and as we've seen. So that means in some cases that people may notice some soil movement on their property that they haven't seen to date. And we're really interested to understand about those types of situations, and certainly if people notice that type of movement on their property, they should consider getting an expert in to assess their property and just make sure that there's not a bigger issue there, because we have seen signs of some soil movements around Auckland in the last 36 hours, which just isn't unexpected, but it's good for people to stay vigilant.
And just to be clear on the red sticker one, so don't enter until you've had that conversation with
Correct.
the council.
Yes.
I have one more question about infrastructure. In terms of infrastructure, what's the most pressing problem right now?
It's a very good question, and I'm not sure that I would pick any one particular area of infrastructure over the other. There's been great progress made in resolving a number of our roading issues. We've had teams working really hard on our wastewater, our stormwater networks. We've got potable water up and running through the reticulated supply, I understand, now to all properties. I think probably just maintaining that ongoing state of repair is the priority. We did have a setback, of course, on Tuesday night, which has meant, not only that we've had more damage to some of the infrastructure, but also had a significant increase in our calls for welfare support as well. So, that would really be from my perspective, the priority is getting some favourable conditions that allow us to keep moving forwards in the work that we're doing.
Are military personnel and other civil services like park rangers, are they still out and about helping out across the city?
Absolutely, and we have got, I may have mentioned this at a previous briefing, but we've got additional support coming in from the New Zealand Defence Force to help specifically with our waste delivery of our waste management plan and helping people with waste pick-up and collection.
When are they expected to get here?
I haven't got the exact data around that. Some of that is it's linked also to some work we're doing around identifying vulnerable people within our affected areas that may not have reached out to us for help. So some of that is discovery phase at the moment, and once we've got that information, we will be proactively going out to check on those properties and to try and work with anyone that is in that situation, and that's when we're likely to pull on more of that resource. Thank you, everybody.